Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence, with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome to this edition of Access to Democracy. My name is Paul Anderson. I'm host here today, and I have with me a very special guest, Alan Page. And I need to make a full disclosure at the beginning of this interview for the audience. I'm a big fan of yours, a real big fan. Now, not because of what you did on the football field. I'm a fan of you, the person, and what you have brought to the state of Minnesota and what you contributed. So, full disclosure.
It's mutual, Paul.
Okay.
We've had the good fortune to work together, to spend time together, to get to know each other, and agree and disagree.
Oh, yeah.
And I've enjoyed every moment of it.
You put your finger on something that's very important in this time of the diverse nature of our country. We have had the chance to interact and get to know each other in a way that is just, for me, it's really been, made me a better person.
Well, and same here, you know, we do live at a time when people sort of being able to disagree at the same time be civil,
yeah,
is challenging, and part of that, I think, is that there's this tendency to make it personal.
Yes, there is.
And you know, the disagreeing about whatever the issue might be is not personal, at least.
Yeah. But there's an aspect to personal, and I've thought about this any number of times. For almost 2 decades, I sat across this table from you at the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I watched your thought process, your thing, and I would often think about how could somebody be willing to discriminate against another human being, but if they get to know who they're dealing with, you know, and that's one of the big gifts that you've given to me. But my objective today is to explain to the audience a little bit about who you are and why I have come to admire yourself. We've had this talk. We talk about children. The biggest gift they can get is good nurturing and good parenting.
Yes.
Who were the people in your life that were responsible for your growing up and made you who you were?
My mother, my father, my brothers and sisters. I mean, the reality is, you know, we talk about heroes and role models and all that. We're influenced by those people we can reach out and touch. And who is closest in terms of reaching out and touching?
But, you know, okay, I grew up in a white middle class, you know, maybe lower middle class, whatever. It was more of a challenge growing up, you know, as a black person in Canton, Ohio, wasn't it?
Well, a challenge in the sense that the outside influences were different and hostile, but in the sense of family, I suspect they weren't a whole lot different.
Oh. So you had a very supportive, nurturing family.
Absolutely.
And did they set goals for you, or did they cause you to think about?
They set expectations.
Okay.
My parents used to be, one of the things that they would say to all four of us kids repeatedly is, whatever you want to do in life, do it well.
Okay.
Actually, don't do it well, do it as well as you can.
Okay.
In their own way, what they were saying was, seek excellence.
You know, in this day and age, that's a good message for parents, for them to teach their kids that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can hear it. It's ringing in my ears now.
Okay.
If you want to be a garbage collector, be the best garbage collector that you can be.
Okay.
If you want to be a doctor, be the best doctor that you can be. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily sink in all at once.
No.
But over time, it's become part of who I am.
And it stays with you because you said it still resonates with you.
Absolutely. Seek excellence.
So you and I grew up in America, but we grew up in different Americas, okay? And so I want to probe a little bit about it. And there's some events, Brown versus Board of Education, Emmett Till, the integration of the school in Little Rock, Thurgood Marshall's appointment. I mean, I basically had some passing knowledge of that. What did those events mean to you?
Well, for me, those were significant events, particularly Brown versus the Board of Education. Indeed, at some level, for me, Brown was life-altering.
But you were only 9 years old.
Actually, I was 8 when it was when it was decided.
And it resonated with you.
Absolutely, because by its nature, it sounded the death knell for state-sponsored segregation. Not just in education, although in education, but in all aspects of our life. And it's something that maybe I didn't understand all that well as an 8-year-old, but it was clear that it was significant, that it was going to change the future. And it absolutely did change the future.
Yeah. That you reacted that way at 8 years old, that's profound and awesome in really a way.
Well, you know, when you grow up in an environment where simply because of the color of your skin, you are perceived as something less than the other. Having the country's highest court say, no, you are equal. Even an 8-year-old can figure that out.
I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm just going to make a passing comment. In this stage and day and age, that's why we can be a little dismayed with where our current court is going, because, you know, think about the influence it had on someone like you, and that they go in a wrong-headed direction. It can be very damaging.
Well, damaging in a whole host of ways. But the fact is, and this is something else my parents preached, was that while I may, as an individual, have different attributes than the person next to me, doesn't make me less than, just makes me different. And that those differences don't define the quality of the person. They just define differences. And we're all different, right?
Yeah. But let me do a pivot on you, okay? the optimism that comes from Brown versus education was shortly thereafter, within a couple of years, you had this horrific thing with respect to Emmett Till and his brutally beaten and killed in Mississippi, and then his mother insisted on having an open casket. And I dare say that you saw that. What was your reaction to that?
Well, as people in the people I grew up with, the young black kids that I grew up with, would say the only difference between me and Emmett Till is I wasn't there.
But that's scary.
It's very scary. But that being said, it is within all of us to do what we can to change it.
Okay.
And it's either that or succumb to it. And
so I'm going to transition. Did that have any impact on you about thinking you would want to become a lawyer?
I think Brown was the thing that made me want to become a lawyer.
At 8 years old, it made that kind of impact.
Yeah. First of all, I'm 8 years old and don't know any lawyers, don't have any lawyers in my family, any connection to lawyers in my background. But I would hear stories about lawyers, and lawyers make lots of money, don't work too hard, and play golf every Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, that's not true.
Big fancy cars, right? In the 8-year-old mind,
Okay.
that sounds pretty good given the prospects of growing up in Canton, Ohio, no matter whether you were black or white or what. Things went well, maybe
But
you got a job.
You're not being completely candid.
Maybe
with
you get a job in a steel mill.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it. Watching too much Perry Mason is part of it. But also, the decision in Brown, for me, gave me a sense of the power of the law.
That's what I wanted to
that
get
it
back.
can be used to ensure fairness, to ensure justice. That saying above the door at the Supreme Court, equal justice under the law. We haven't always had equal justice under the law.
We still don't in many ways.
We still don't, but we have the ability to bend the moral arc toward justice.
See, that's the thing. See, I was 14 when I wanted to become a lawyer. You were a younger age, about 8 or 9. And,
Right.
And you saw that as a means that you could use to make change.
And, you talk about Emmett Till, you look at Little Rock in 1957, you look at a lot of things along the way. Those
Jay
things
Meredith?
a whole litany.
Okay, Thurgood Marshall, his wife just died. What was it like? He got appointed to the Supreme Court in '67. First year with the Vikings, I think.
Right.
What kind of reaction did you have to that?
Well, to the extent that I looked up to people outside the influence of my family, Thurgood Marshall has always been one of those people, long before
Really?
he was appointed to the Supreme Court. When you think about what he accomplished, he used the law, hostile as it was, to turn it in on itself to make progress. You've got to be really good to do that.
You're really good. I mean, you read his
really
arguments.
good.
He turned some of that stuff on the court. It was very clever.
Turned it back on him.
Turned it back.
Absolutely.
But he was nearly lynched, He was
more than once.
More than once.
There's a book, Simple Justice.
Yeah, I've read it, yeah. Scary.
Very scary. And yet, the courage that he and those people he worked with had in the face of real danger, not perceived danger.
Yes.
All in order to give someone like me the opportunity to do the things that I have done?
Well, I'm going to pivot here now, because, you know, you are, well, I mean, you're an iconic figure in the world of football. But was football an end in itself or a means to an end? And did you start, you know, with pee-wees and kind of work your way up?
I didn't start playing football until I was in the 9th grade.
Really?
And then only because my brother, who was ahead of me in school, played. I wasn't particularly athletic.
I find that hard to believe.
As it turns out, I had the aptitude to do what defensive linemen do, and professionally defensive tackles particularly. But, you know, I'm kind of a one-trick pony. It's a really good trick, but a one-trick pony.
But what stage did you come to realize that you were fairly good at what you did?
It was well down the line.
Was it?
Because for me, you know, the sports thing is interesting in that being out there and playing, you sort of ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing it for the glory? Am I doing it for the recognition? Am I doing it for, you know, what are the reasons I'm doing this? And at some level, at least for me, I came to the conclusion that if I'm going to do it, I have to do it for me.
And do it well.
And to be as good as I can be at it.
Why Notre Dame?
To perfect my...
Why
my
Notre
ability.
Dame as the school you went to?
Its reputation. I mean,
you were recruited, right?
I was recruited by Notre Dame.
Pretty highly recruited, actually.
Well, for the time, yeah.
Yeah.
And it had the academic reputation with my interest in the law. It had the, obviously, the football reputation. And you walk on that campus and you're looking up at the Golden Dome and you hear the Notre Dame fight song. Pretty hard to walk away from it.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about your getting into the law. You started in law school at somewhat different stages. I mean, and you told me
I'm a law school graduate. I am also a law school dropout.
Yeah, but what you told me is that you came to realization a couple times you weren't quite ready for it early on.
The first time around, I wasn't focused. I was it was 1968, my second year with the Vikings. Some would say, pretty arrogant to think that you could start your second year of professional football and law school at the same time. But I enrolled at William Mitchell. Lasted about 3 weeks. Lasted 3 weeks because it took me 2.5 weeks to figure out how to drop out. You know, you show up the first day having read the 500-page assignment preliminarily, and then you get in the class and the professor starts talking, going down the Socratic road, and you have no idea what's going on. At least I didn't. And what I didn't realize was I was right. I didn't know what was going on, but basically neither did anybody else.
But when you went back to law school, you were ready for it.
Ready for it. Had some experience working with lawyers, talking with lawyers, some good friends who were lawyers. Had spent some time on the executive committee of the NFL Players Association, was a player rep. You know, 9 years into my career, football career, and matured quite a bit and understood that, you know, nobody knows what they're doing those first few classes.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that's just the reality.
You wonder whether you belong there.
Exactly. And what I didn't realize that the first time was, yeah, I was lost, but everybody else was lost too.
But it takes a while to come to that discovery, doesn't it?
Well,
You think everybody else is to the manner born and they belong there.
And they understand it and they get it and all of that. Yeah.
So, but now we're going to run out of time, and it's just terrible. But when did you come to the conclusion that you wanted to be a judge?
You know, that is kind of a long story, but 1982, woke up one morning, read the Star Tribune. There was an article that indicated that Rudy Perpich had mentioned that he was going to make me a district court judge.
You've read about it in the newspaper?
In the newspaper.
You didn't have any heads up?
And you know,
that's Rudy, you know.
Had no thoughts about being a judge. Basically hadn't thought about it, didn't think it was something that would necessarily interest me. But you know, that was my basically second year of full-time practicing law. But then from there, and obviously it didn't happen, but from there I developed a sense of who I was as a lawyer, what the law was about, and thought, you know, I could make a contribution as an appellate court judge, not necessarily as a trial court judge.
So I want to get to this. I mean, okay, this is in the nature of full disclosure. The audience should know that I did pretty much what I could within my power to prevent you becoming an appellate judge. I was an advisor to Arnie Carlson and Governor's Guard, their appellate judge appointments. I told you, I said, if you want to be a district court judge, Arnie will appoint you, but it won't happen as an appellate judge.
And, you know, my skills, abilities, and interests, I mean, I could have done it, maybe, and done okay, but okay isn't good enough.
Now, I want to get to Diane, but I got to say, it's one thing that impressed me from that first one we talked was your insight into yourself. I mean, I thought it was maybe a bit presumptuous when you said that you've analyzed yourself and you say that your skills are more for an appellate judge than a district court judge. I mean, you were spot on.
You know, my interest wasn't in being a judge for the sake of being a judge. My interest in being a judge was making a contribution to the law, making a contribution to, well, serving the people of this state, doing what I could to build on the foundation of justice in this state.
But there were a lot of roadblocks thrown in front of you. Not only me, there were others.
There were others.
There were others that, you know, made it hard. Yeah.
Made it hard, but at the end of the day, the people of Minnesota gave me the opportunity to serve.
This is
and let me just say, I owe the people of this state an enormous debt of gratitude.
As they do to you. But this is a good transition point. I love your wife, Diane. She was quite a person. But she was kind of hostile towards me at the
beginning. She was not a fan to begin with.
Yeah, she knew that I tried to thwart your efforts, and but I don't want to say lucky, but she was such a good compatriot for you. She
was the love of my life.
As were you her.
As I was hers. And in her own right, she was as smart as anyone I've ever met. She was focused on justice in her own way as much as anyone I have ever met. Social justice, racial justice, gender justice. That's what she was all about. Yeah. And she was a doer.
Yeah, but you had such wonderful rapport. I mean, and she was one of your biggest advocates. And I wish
you never wanted to get on her wrong side.
Oh yeah,
with respect to me.
It took me a while to get on her right side. But one of the last times, she had cancer and but I was at your house. I think I was getting some of your books. By the way, Alan has written, I think, 4 books with his daughter.
Books.
I forgot to bring one. They're great gifts for kids, good gifts at Christmas time, teach you a lot. But the rapport that I witnessed between the two of you, no pretense, but just two people focused, they're loving each other and focused on the same thing.
Some days it was hard to tell, for me, hard to tell where I began or where I ended and she began, and vice versa.
So I'm going to bring up something I used to be. I used to say, Alan, if I assigned you 100 points, assigned Diane 100 points, and I put you together, it would somehow come up to 275. Where would the extra 75 points come? Where did they come from?
The whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
And a lot of it came from Diane, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. She not only loved me, she encouraged me, she motivated me, she allowed me to be far more than I could have ever been alone.
And that's one of the gifts of life, isn't it?
One of the gifts, and when you lose it, one of the real tragedies.
Yeah, I know. But you got 4 wonderful grandchildren, which we're running out of time. I give you a hard time because I say that you have too much pride with respect to your grandchildren, but they are pretty much the joy of your life right now. Is that true?
They are the joy of my life. You know, it's interesting. At the end of the day, she's still giving.
Yeah,
through the grandchildren.
Through the grandchildren. Yeah. And they're quite accomplished, too.
They're wonderful.
Are you going to let them play contact football?
That's their decision. That's not my decision.
It's a dangerous sport, you know.
It is a dangerous and violent sport.
I know. Well, I guess we're running out of time. So I want to say thank you, Alan. You know, I have barely touched the surface as to who you are, but thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing some of your background with us.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's been
It's fun.
Been good conversation.